Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all around the world. It's great to see where you're dialing in from. Please do keep putting in the chat where you're calling in from. And it's July, so for those of you that are in the Northern Hemisphere, we really appreciate you spending some time with us today in this webinar, talking about family enterprise owners leading in turbulent times in the middle of your summer. For those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, we hope that this is also a good timing for you. It's certainly very important timing as we think about everything that's going on in the world. We are indeed living in turbulent times, and so the question of leading in turbulent times is very timely. And who better to join us to help us think about this topic on this Innovation at Work webinar series than my good colleague John Davis, who is a senior lecturer in family enterprise at the MIT Sloan School of Management. Now, John is a familiar face to many of you, of course. He is really one of the original researchers and thinkers about the topic of family enterprise and family business. In many ways, we think that he created this field of not only study, but really of practically helping this unique kind of business and company and enterprise sector to really flourish. And John's expertise in this field is globally recognized as an author, as a scholar, as a coach and teacher, and as a researcher. And so we're very, very pleased, John, that you have been able to join me for today's webinar. I know you're going to talk a little bit about some of the teaching that you do in this space, but we're particularly excited to hear more about this question of what can leaders of family enterprises do as we are really facing these unprecedented kinds of turbulent forces that are affecting, not just business, but society in so many ways, wherever we are in the world. So we're going to hear a little bit from you, I think, about some of your latest work in these areas, but this is by design an interactive session. So I invite you, as Elaine just described, all who are watching, to please do, as and when you have any questions that come up, put them into the question tab, as soon as they occur to you, because I will come back after we've heard a few remarks from John and help him look through your questions and try to answer as many of them as we can. If you'd like to comment in the chat as you're hearing the discussion go along as well, we also welcome that. It's another way that we can be interactive. But please do put the questions in the Q&A box, because it really helps us make sure that we get to your question. So with that, John, I'd like to invite you to start sharing your presentation and tell us about this topic, please.
Thank you, Peter. Welcome, everybody. Peter, thank you very much for your support, not only here in this webinar, but also for the family enterprise programs that Sloan is developing and launching and running to really help this huge international sector stay successful. I am delighted to be part of the faculty that at Sloan that is working on a huge range of issues that I think are cutting edge for management. And one of the dimensions that I'm bringing to our Sloan programs is the importance of ownership. And we're going to be talking about how leaders, how owners, how the governance system of a family enterprise can really adapt and get in front of the awesome turbulence that we're experiencing today. And I'll take this kind of piece by piece so we have a common way of thinking about what we're facing, but then deep dive into what leading in turbulent times and owning in turbulent times actually means. So I like to start here. We'll be interactive right from the gate. owning and leading and managing a business, can you not show that yet, please? Um, is like this river in a sense. And if your company or your family office or your broader enterprise is a boat, you may be way upriver in pretty calm waters, or you may be going through water that is running quickly but pretty navigable. Or you could be in light rapids, a little more challenging. That's volatility is the way we normally talk about that. Or you could be in rocky rapids, and that's turbulence. Now, as you come down this river, uh, you don't always see what's ahead of you, what's around the next bend in the river. So I like this photo and this metaphor that I'm explaining. Um, but you need to be prepared for waters that are unlike what you're in now. And what you don't want to do is to find yourself caught close to this. To be close to a crisis situation where you don't even hear the waterfall. This is true in nature. The noise from the waterfall comes from the bottom of the waterfall mostly. So often you don't even hear the waterfall until you're perilously close to it. And so the question that I have for you all is, where is your boat? Now, this is only for the webinar participants who are family members whose family owns an enterprise, or for the management of family companies and family offices. We have a number of you as well. But for those of you in those two categories, where are you in these waters? Let's answer the poll and we'll look at where you say you are, and I'll tell you where I think a lot of family companies are. How are we doing on this? Okay, do we have results? There we go. Okay. Yeah, this is, well, this is more optimistic and more positive than I normally see when I ask this question. And I'm asking it a lot these days. 16%, what is that? 1 in 8 maybe uh, say we're in calm waters. Good for you. Don't don't believe that that will necessarily continue for you. The water is running quickly, half of you. A quarter were in Rocky Rapids and 13%. So pretty close to 40% are in turbulent or dangerous territory. And 60% roughly are in pretty navigable territory. Now, if you have, um, if given enough time, if you live long enough, if you manage and own things long enough, you could easily go through all four of these categories. You could be in calm or what I call steady waters. You could be in quickly running water, but still navigable. That is pretty close to the first category, actually, in my view. Or you could be more in turbulent times, turbulent waters, and your turbulence could come from something going on in your family, not even necessarily something happening to your business. Or it could be very localized. The turbulence that you're in could be more country related, or like in the US, or the turbulence that you're experience could be really confined to a very uneasy and quickly changing and volatile industry situation. And if you're in the close to the crisis stage, if you're close to that waterfall, that again, that could be related to um, something very personalized or localized around you. It could be a weather event. We're hearing a lot about those these days. It could be something related to definitely related to your industry, or maybe there's a significant problem with your company or in your family or with key relationships that could be devastating to you. So turbulence and crisis can be broadly experienced or locally or personally experienced, but you're likely to experience all of these. And we've been looking at what it means in terms of the environment that you face, and then later we'll get to the requirements for management, ownership, leadership in these times. But you could be here. Now, if you're in steady times, and when you take a look historically, let's say over the last 150, 200 years, um, probably about and of course it changes from country to country and industry to industry, but probably about a third of the time has been pretty steady, but only a third of the time for many companies. Maybe you stretch that to 50%, depending where in that historical era you place yourself. But turbulent times are periodic, and they seem to be increasing in frequency, but also in the length of time that they occupy us. And turbulent times are uh, almost always you're seeing pretty close to constant change of one kind or another in a period of turbulence. Things move very quickly, sometimes seismically, meaning that two or three factors that you're experiencing change with change together and create big shifts. And these times are also experiencing, and I'm looking for exactly the right term for this, but they're kind of jerky. There's kind of just like tectonic plates, there's a lot of pressure building up, and then you'll see very quick changes. And it could be either from big leaps in technology, for example, or uh, today's Wednesday, so there's a new tariff, and we didn't expect that. Or it could be that there's something happening in the economy that is really unsettling. But turbulence has these kinds of characteristics. And then, of course, crisis. And crisis as crisis, there's a lot written actually on crisis management that I've read and borrowed from, and to help my understanding of not only this phase, the crisis phase, but a lot of it relates to kind of extreme turbulence. But crises are non-regular, extreme negative events. And again, it could be a heart attack, or it could be the loss of your business leader, unexpected, or it could be a fire in your factory, or it could be a flood, or it could be a war that comes on and devastates and sets you back. Whatever it is, there are things that one must do. You need to recognize that were there, but you also have some particular things that you can and need to do during a crisis period. Now, this decade, since basically since COVID hit, uh, people that look at society and industry and business and technology have said this now for 5 years, that this decade is predicted to be, and we've lived up to every single prediction on this one of the most turbulent and, good word, transformative decades in centuries. And we've experienced it. You've experienced it. We're in it. And the world that we're in today has been evolving, I think, for pretty steadily for about 60 years. 1970, if you go back and look at demographics, social, technology, other kinds of changes, globalization changes, a lot starts up and starts to accelerate in the 1970s. So we've been at this for a while, leaving us with a world that's very interconnected still, technologically, socially, trade-wise, uh, experiencing rapid and accelerating change with some quick and volatile movements, much more transparent, and correspondingly, there's a lot more surveillance, not only in society, we read about that in China, for example, but surveillance in general of people, being able to track and see into the lives of families and businesses and leaders, et cetera. We have a lot more information, many more choices, but at the same time, our attention span, there's several good books out right now on this important topic that are the attention span that we have to focus and get things done and understand our world has been highly distracted, but also shrinking. Societies, organizations, families, much more diverse, much more complex, a lot of opportunities in this world still. But gaping inequality, existential threats of various kinds, polarized, fractured, hard to build consensus in societies. And then where I'll leave you here is you have to, in this world, make decisions and place your bets, capital bets, people bets, technology bets, culture bets. And if you're a leader and an owner, that falls on you much, much more and more regularly now than in my almost 50 years of working with family companies and business owning families and now family offices. I have never seen how quickly things are changing and how the time that you have to make important choices and set direction and course corrections. The time to do that, the window of opportunity is shrinking. And yet, you can't look very far into the future. You can't, because it's like this. It used to be, and I know I sound kind of an old timer now, but it used to be, and it wasn't that long ago, that companies would set at least 5-year plans and often 10-year plans, not visions, plans. And of course, you would never get to exactly the endpoint that you thought you would when you do a 10-year plan or even a 5-year plan. But there was enough confidence that we understand where the world is going and what we're facing and what we have to consider in our decisions that we can plan. Today, companies plan 1 or 2 years out. Maybe they have to make longer term bets on capital bets for sure, and people bets. They do. But they feel certain or moderately certain only a short distance in the future. This is a big, big change. So we're facing this kind of a world, and it used to be when things were steadier that you could identify and more visible. You could identify your major threats, and they were largely and risks, largely around these factors. In today's world, and again, a lot of these are shrouded, um, there are all a huge number of potential risks that you, given the volatility and the change and the trends, and that we need to be at least aware of, if not planning for and integrating into our thinking about what's next and what do we do. So this is the world that I pay attention to and that my clients pay attention to, and that I'm getting my students, executive and MBA students, to pay attention to, and to be thinking about the world as it's evolving and we're moving into this future, and to be able to come up with a cogent response to this increasingly complex, riskier, and volatile environment. Now, in a survey I did, global survey of family enterprise, both generation, senior and next generations were represented in the respondent group, big group, um, good diversity, highly consistent in their responses. About 2/3 of the respondents said, yeah, we get it. We expect moderate to high levels of turbulence through this decade. Again, this is right after we were coming out of COVID, so they were looking forward 10 years. Almost everybody, you get to 84%, that's huge, said in order to deal with this environment, almost everybody says we need to change moderately or radically. But then you ask the important question, how many of you are ready? And we get this. Only 29% of the respondents, and again, senior and junior generations, saw it pretty much the same way. Believe 29% believe that they're not, that their family enterprise, their company, their family office, their investments, whatever, are ready for this world. Um, just less than a quarter say their family is ready. Now, you don't have to be a professor at Sloan to say this isn't good enough, that this worries me and it should worry you. And part of our objective, professors, consultants, managers, owners, is to raise that right-hand column up high. You got to get ready. But what does that mean? And that takes us back to what we know about these three different phases that we can and probably will go through, each of us, and what they mean uh, in terms of their characteristics, but also the management prescription or the action prescription related to it. So in steady times, doesn't mean that there's still cycles, there's industries still mature, things change, of course, but in a more steady and predictable way. And we know a lot about the management and the leadership and even the ownership under these conditions. In a turbulent environment, and one that I would say, and most of you would say, and most of the experts would say, and Peter Hurst said when he introduced me, uh, the requirements here are substantially different than the requirements for managing, leading, owning in steady times. And it involves doing a better job at anticipating. We like, and we're doing a lot of work in this and in the executive program that I'll tell you about later on scenario planning and also encouraging strategic experiments as opposed to trying to develop long-term strategic plans. That has largely uh, gone out of popularity for all the right reasons. Agility in organizations, but also in what you own in your portfolio is really necessary. Being able to trade out the businesses that you're in or the business activities, at least that you're in, and the investments that you've made, you've got to become much more agile. You also have to build resilience because we're facing a lot of this. And when you're both on both sides of that curve, but especially the lower part of the curve, you need the resources, you need the talent, you need the unity stored up to move through it without big bumps in the way you're doing things and what you're doing. Trusted leadership, but also better governance. And we're going to come back to this. And owners have so much more to do in turbulent times. And then in crisis, we won't spend any time looking at this. But again, I think it's important for you to get ready even here in this third column. And there are some prescriptions for how you manage through a crisis period. And typically, these are shorter periods than turbulent periods. Um, but we actually know quite a lot now about crisis management. I'm going to talk about each of the success requirements under turbulence, but also focus a little more time on the two that I've highlighted here. So, anticipation of trends. People, individuals, groups, families, companies, societies are poor. Sometimes they rise to mediocrity in anticipating what's in front of them. People tend to be unrealistically optimistic about the future. That's been shown in a number of psychological and even sociological studies. Companies tend to be much more focused on operations than getting altitude and thinking about the future. So they don't anticipate very well. Uh, but we have to do better. And we have to understand trends, how things are moving, and what we're likely to face in our family, in our company, in our industry, in our society, even, and think about it in a more structured way. You need a framework. You need at least a checklist of things you're watching, and you need to assign people to watch and to understand and to report back and to get us to think about course corrections or bigger movements. And here, you need your own framework. I'll show you mine. That I look at external and internal trends, internal and external forces that change our world and our capabilities in our world. And these four categories uh, work for me to think about the world around us. Environmental, planetary changes, a bunch of those. Technology, of course. Geopolitics and trade, yeah, we get that now. And society, our socio-political, economic, it's a big category of things in the world in which we live. Those things are in motion. And I could show you 50, 60 things that in around these categories that are changing today. And we need to understand how they're affecting these parts of our life and including, and here's what we're seeing high level and in a general way around for family businesses and family offices, almost constant changes, occasional disruption. We use the word disruption too liberally. We apply it too often. A disruption really is a change that is big enough, a change that is big enough that you have to do things very differently. Think of COVID, where we couldn't go to work in the same workplaces. We couldn't interact in the same way. We couldn't conduct commercial relationships in this. It was different. That's a disruption. Technology changing occasionally, changing very quickly, like the step up in AI that we're experiencing right now. I have never seen industries mature, consolidate, and disappear at this rate. Consumers getting more powerful, they have much more information, they have more options. Supply chains, what's going on there? And where will that go? Different people have different ideas about how they're being fractured and reformed, business models. But when you get in trouble, if you need to exit or you think the time is right to sell and redeploy, there are lots of buyers today. There's mountains of capital chasing good businesses. So we're paying attention to these changes, and you should too. Internally, we're also seeing changes to both the enterprising family and the family enterprise. Diversity and complexity in families way up. Families have, again, since about 1970, we've seen it becoming much more egalitarian. I mean, we're trying to treat people pretty equally and fairly within that context, less hierarchical, but also much more individualistic. Individualism has been on the rise in society, but it's reflected in families. And individualism is understandable. There's some good aspects of being thinking of your individual interests and needs and respecting individuals for who they are. But what we're giving up is a more collectivist attitude within families and also in societies that we're here for others and that what's good for us can also be good for me. So that's changing. Families are morphing, becoming more international. Next generation interests and attitudes are diverging more from their senior generation family members. Also, things like companies are growing so fast now. And again, this wasn't true pre-1960 or pre-1970, sorry, but post-1970 and especially post-1980, we saw enormous accelerating growth of companies. Companies could become billion-dollar companies in less than a generation because of the opening up of markets. We never saw that before. And so that's persisting. And can families in a quickly growing company that they own keep up with that growth so that they understand how to lead it and manage it? It's becoming harder and harder. Longevity, lifestyle expectations, other things are shaping families and family companies. We're watching these things, and you need to as well. How do you manage? Well, leaders in these times have particular activities and particular objectives that they need to be very clear about. They need to be very purpose and values focused. They need to keep reminding us in these unsettling times what we're about. They have to be able to make tough decisions using those. Here's our purpose. Here are our values. These are my priorities. This is what we need to do and why. We need to keep learning. We need to keep setting direction and making corrections despite the fog, despite the uncertainty. Just because it's foggy, it doesn't mean you're off the hook, leaders or owners, in terms of setting direction. It's just harder. And you've got to be more agile in how you move and also what you do, your activities, your portfolio of assets. And throughout all of this, sorry, we've got to portion, we have to keep building unity. We have to keep building um, our financial balance sheet. We need these. We have to keep building our bench, in part because it's so turbulent and we don't know what's next. And it could be one of these. We've got to be ready. So leaders have to be focused on this kind of an action plan or action list. Owners and boards need to get more engaged. I'm going to move quickly beyond this just to give us time to talk and make this point. I said this a bit earlier. In steadier times, you could think about who makes what decisions, who even talks about what topics in three categories: operating issues, strategic issues and decisions, and then owner level decisions. And very few things came up to the owners, honestly. Uh, you know, big bets of capital, big hires, who's the next CEO? Yeah, of course, you check with the owners. And owner unity was theirs to manage, hopefully well. Other things were delegated to the board or further down to management. In today's world, in today's world, many things have risen, are rising up to the owners. Why? Because each of these things can have very important owner level consequences. Wealth is impacted. Capital bets are clearly needed. If there's a change in technology that's significant enough, that's gonna require a big bet to keep up, probably. New people who know about this new technology and a new culture to develop within our company. And owners tend to watch out over culture. So a lot of things are rising up to the owner level. Now, historically, if you look back a couple of hundred years, even more, which I've done, and you look at the companies that survived over a number of generations, they were all pretty good or good at operations. But what they were good at is when they needed to be were making the right owner level decisions. Owner level quality has always been important to long-term success. It's just that it's even more important to stay in the game now, that your owners are really good and can do the job that they have to do. And so owners need to think much more like owners, even though most owners still think like operators. Now, I can't get into today's webinar how you make this shift, but we spend a lot of time on it in the program, the Future Family Enterprise program, because we understand its relevance to your success. Now, what are you facing? Let's do another poll. And again, this is for the people who are family members or managers in these family enterprises. Which of these, check as many as you can, as you've experienced, let's say in the last 6 months. Let's see where we come out on this. This is a list of usual suspects. So what are we seeing now in terms of results?
We're just shy of 30%.
It's okay. Yeah, they're all registering. And oh, this is interesting. Yeah, yeah. Technology, people, capital bets, of course, talent strategy, huge. It's in the firm that I founded that I work in, um, Cambridge Family Enterprise Group. We work with families all over the world. You'd be hard pressed to find a single family company. These are typically strong companies that isn't concerned, kind of worried about their bench. That talent strategy is impacting virtually everybody and every company. But environmental challenges, not so much, even though the families see it as a big issue. Uh, Most companies report that it's not as much of an issue to them. And next generation not showing interest, that's low. I'm delighted. So we need to stay agile. You can't pick up a magazine today, a business magazine today, without reading about agility. And increasingly, you're going to see the word resilience. Agility, resilience, agility, resilience. They're right. But agility, um, which involves being able to not only think and move quickly, but to move in different directions. You're agile. It's more than flexible. It's you can move in different directions. And owners have to have an agile mindset here. They have to be open to the new future. They have to be open to not only new approaches, but doing different things to create value. They can't just be focused or so consistently loyal to what we have done in the past. And owners need to insist to leaders of our companies and offices and activities, you've got to embed a culture that respects and encourages agility. Now, here's an example of bad and good agility. Schaeffler, huge German company, family business, leading maker of ball bearings, but most of their ball bearings went into combustion engines. And guess what is becoming, a weaker market, a much weaker market because of the advent of not only electric vehicles, but electric motors in general, which don't use the ball bearings that Schaeffler made. And Schaeffler should have seen this trend coming, didn't, overbet on what they've been doing all along, and really got hit. They're coming back, but it's taken a lot of effort for them to get back online and shift their product line more to electric motors, et cetera. They weren't agile thinking, and they weren't anticipating what was clearly coming at them. But CMB, big Belgian shipping company, new generation of leadership said, uh, all of our ships use dirty carbon-based fuels. These are not only are we going to be regulated severely, which could at a minimum affect our costs, but we could be regulated out of business. We need to reinvent or invent our future. We need to become a disruptor. We need to think about what's next in terms of energy, technology, how we even organize our ships. And they've done a very good job at this, creating a hydrogen motor that at the very least can power pretty significant, but not big ships, but pretty significant boats. And they're moving now to put these new motors into a new technology based on new energy sources into their ships. Now, so agility, but resilience in these ways, and I'll move beyond it, but it's an obvious thing that requires focus, some sacrifice to build resilience, but it pays off. So owners themselves are pivotal in making these bets for companies. Management can only do so much. Then they take issues to the board, and the board can only do so much in promoting and advising the owners of the company to make big, decisive changes. And so owners need to be prepared for change. They need to be in conversation much more than they ever have with their boards, with management. They need to keep their own group well informed. They need to make sure that the owners are ready for what could come next. And then and owners are responsible for this, making sure that their governance system, their owners' decision-making, their boards, their family councils, their other forms of governance are ready to deal with the world that they're in. So governance needs to be adapted. And just think about it, you're probably going to need some new skills, new approaches, new understandings comprising your board. You should be thinking about that. But I also want, and I'm encouraging families and owners of companies to consider what I'm calling a future readiness committee. This committee looks at what's going on around us, what's going on internally, what do we need to get ready for potentially to do the scenario planning and to do the conversations and develop experiments to see if they can move in certain directions. Owners really need to get, and the whole system needs to get ready in this way. But it's going to be led by owners saying, we need to do this. And typically the composition, and this is a new feature in governance. And we're testing it now. Families and ownership groups that are, that really want to survive this period they get the logic. There's nothing, this is not rocket science. It's just something that you have to devote time to putting together and then working this kind of thinking group to inform you about your action plan. So to summarize, there's a lot to do. The things that I've talked about throughout this 45 minutes have been hopefully obvious. Nothing that I've said probably comes as a big surprise, maybe a little surprise. But most of what we need to do now is understandable and requires leadership and the commitment of owners to make sure we move in these directions. So with that, thank you for your attention and patience. I hope you will spend some time going online looking for this really powerful 1-week-long program for family teams that really helps families that come in groups of 4, 6, maybe some more. And we've got a number of families in the room. And the fall program, October 5 through 10, has room. I just checked this morning for 1 or 2 more families. It's getting full. April, we're I would say about a third full, but you've got time on that one. But look into it, please. This is a program that all of what I've been talking about in this hour gets addressed in one or more ways in depth, and families come together and talk about how to get ready for their future, including a lot of the traditional things that we have to do, like pass responsibility and training and authority into the next generation, manage succession well, develop the right governance systems for our enterprise, to be able to manage our family relationships and owner relationships in a respectful, constructive way. There's a lot. It's not all brand new thinking, but this is a program that will really help you prepare. So, Peter, um,
Thank you very much.
you might have some thoughts or questions.
I certainly have many myself, but I want to encourage people who've perhaps been storing up their questions to throw them in the Q&A as well. But there was one from Fatima very early on when you were talking about sort of the reported levels of readiness, and we heard some data from people in the webinar as well. And her question gets to, in the past, did you see that, were family enterprises well configured, historically to be ready for the kinds of changes that we were seeing in the past? And just the issue is that these turbulent times are much more dynamic, or is there something fundamentally different that you're seeing now, where families are less ready than they used to be to deal with whatever they have to deal with?
Thank you. And that's really a very, very helpful question. Um, Families and family companies are much more inclined than other kinds of enterprise to think long term, to want to get the business, the success of the family into the next generation. So those motivations are well in line with preparing for the future. Unfortunately, families, and I don't know that this is much different for other kinds of companies. We're going to see. But families get very attached to their traditional businesses and traditional ways of doing things. They tend to change less quickly than other kinds of groups change. That is not encouraging. And what we need to do in family companies is to import the energy and new ideas of younger people, including our next generation, and to bring in outside expertise to help us strategize about how we preserve the things that really matter about our enterprise, our values, the way we do business, the way we treat people, our our ability to build outstanding cultures, all are characteristic of family enterprise. But to keep that going, we're going to have to improve on anticipating, changing, and making sure that we are betting on the future. Now, is it harder because we're in turbulent times? Yes, it is. And also because of the fogginess of our future. It is, but that's true for everyone, I would say. So we're going to see whether the motivation for long-term planning and thinking outweighs resistances to change. That's how I would answer Fatima.
Great, thank you. And a question of my own, if I may. You were talking towards the later part of your presentation about um, if you like, sort of the need for the right talent that these enterprises need. Many of the issues that you're describing face all kinds of companies, whether they're family owned or not. So
That's
one would
right.
assume that there's going to be enormous competition for that talent. What are the advantages that family enterprises have in that regard, and what should they be doing to make sure they can take advantage of those of the benefits that they offer?
Yeah, thank you. We find in family companies in general, on average, outperform non-family companies, and in a number of respects. And so, family companies can be really attractive workplaces for professional non-family. Why? Well, because you've got this really interesting business that is solid. It wants to get into the future. It's more resilient in hard times. It's less likely that we're going to do a lot of layoffs the next time we experience a slump. This is an attractive place to work, but we need to give these non-family executives lots of great career opportunities. And one of the things that family companies have to uh, really adjust for, there can't be only family in senior leadership. There can be a mixed group of family and non-family based on talent, but you can't have family here and non-family here. That's got to go. And most family companies, I would say over the last couple of decades that I've been working with them, have really understood that and are making those kinds of changes. But it's talent, talent, talent. It's a big, big issue, and we've also got to get good at that. We will address that a bit in FFE.
Thank you, John. This is a fascinating topic, and I see we're just about running out of time. It has flown by, so thank you so much for sharing your latest insights and important thinking about this topic, and also for sharing information about the Future Family Enterprise courses upcoming in October and April. And again, like John, I would encourage anyone who found this interesting or compelling or concerning or exciting to take a look on our website at these courses. There's a lot of other resources from John and his colleagues and researchers that are there as well. And we hope that we will see some of you here at the MIT campus in October or April or beyond, or if not that, online in future versions of this webinar and our Innovation at Work webinar series. Thank you again, everyone all around the world, for joining us and for interacting with us and with each other in important ways during this webinar. I really appreciate it. And above all, thank you, John, again, for all the work you do here at MIT Sloan School,
Thank you, Peter.
for joining us today. And please keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.